I thought, well, it's a small group, which is great, can be more interactive. And as I printed this out, I thought, well, I should just do questions and answers and specifically address what you need and what your age groups are. So we can start out with the age group of children. Telling me your name and the ages, names of the kid, or whatever you want to say about your children.
Okay, my name's Dawn. My son's Caleb. He's 6 in first grade.
Okay, great.
Struggling to read.
Okay.
My name's Katie. My kids are 5, 7, and 9, but I am here specifically for my kindergartner who's
Okay, great.
My name's Jane. I have a 4-year-old right here,
Oh, wonderful.
and I have a 4-year-old, 7, and 10, and they've kind of learned to read inside of me. So I'm really more. I'm just very inconsistent with teaching them, and so I'm here more for me than for any struggles they're having.
Oh, okay. Wow, wonderful.
Yeah.
We're up. It's a great start. It's really good to know that we're all talking about the same age level. Emergent readers?
Yes.
Okay. So, and as I was writing this too, a couple things came to mind. I was teaching for Thread, which are like early childhood teachers, and I did 3 or 4 presentations of an hour long, and hour and a half. It's like, how do I boil this down to 10 or 15 minutes? And as I was looking at it, I thought, this is all stuff homeschool parents are great at, and why you homeschool, right? So sharing your love of reading is the number one thing you can do. And a lot of you guys are doing, integrating everything that you do with in the home. So number one is, this is one thing many programs get wrong. I'm not talking about homeschool programs, but, is sometimes they'll adopt a whole program and they're not using quality children's literature. There's always quality children's literature in the schools, but you can teach a lot of skills through quality children's literature. This is an example. A Juno illustrator who won the Caldecott Award, Michaela Gold. So this book just inspires wonder and imagination. So it's a Juno illustrator, and she wrote her first book, which is called Berry Song, and so she both wrote and illustrated and spelled selfies. So this touches on a couple points. You can also bring in books from the local area, and that will also inspire kids. And then there's more to write about too, because they can write about their own experiences. And this is called We Are Water Protectors. And so really important that theme can connect to anybody, anywhere. So definitely a good example of quality children's literature. Here's another one I use a lot in my lessons. This, John Muth, he has a lot of values and social emotional learning kind of lessons, like a lot of good children's books do. So this main character, Panda, which everybody loves, is, the one who's teaching the lesson. And he's teaching some lessons through drawing. There's a story within a story in this one. And I've used this one with older kids and some Raven students I was teaching. So it's really beautiful. Even though it's a picture book, it can be for all ages of kids. So John Muth, he wrote 4 of these books, one based on each season. And they're just wonderful. And there's so many lessons I've taught. In fact, one of the, and I've ordered them from Harstad right next door. So one of the ones I use, the 3 children go to visit, or he tells them, we're going to go visit a friend of mine, and she's an elderly lady. And they always thought, well, she's always grumpy. She always yells at us, a typical kind of social lesson. And then they go over to her house and find out she was a teacher before. And they start drawing pictures for her. And she tells them, words are like, or words have roots, and they're like trees. And so it's a really good way you can have a visual image of the tree and teach about root words. So I use that for my grammar. One of the things I've learned as a second language instructor as well is pop-up grammar. So the old style of teaching languages was to focus on grammar all the time. And it doesn't work very well. About 16% of the population can grasp grammar type lessons by themselves. So we do what's called pop-up grammar. So if you're reading in here, and for example, I am a ghost, said Stillwater. What are you going to be? And so you could teach about tense. There's present tense and past tense. And when you know to do a pop-up grammar grammar lesson is when a child is struggling with something. So if you notice, well, my child is having struggling reading or writing in the past tense or future tense, you can teach. Here's a way to write future tense with using the word go, going. So there's different ways you can incorporate the lesson within the quality children's literature. And I can let you guys look through these. And any book can work. And one of, books you have in your home. But really focus on quality children's literature. If you're looking at, I'm going to buy this series of small paperbacks that come like 10 books in a series, you might want to think instead to buy the quality books. And the books that win awards they win awards for reading because they're so good on many levels. Like the Mo Willems books, he's won 6 or 7 awards. And when I think about those books, I was like, if I was a reading teacher, as a reading teacher, if I could write books, those would be the books I write. And I was like, I almost think he's has the same background I do as a reading specialist. What the books he wrote. Well, he wrote for Sesame Street, and he wrote for his daughter. Those are all very good qualifications, and he's a genius. So, I do have one of those books. And some people don't know this, but he wrote 4 books for preschoolers or kindergartners. And I have whole lessons based on these because they're so great. They're pattern books, they're repetition, and another example of quality children's literature, and kids love them. Right now I'm teaching skiing during the day to do all those winter camps, and I happen to have these books when, little ones are kind of bored or waiting in line. I was working rentals for a while, and now I'm fully time instructor. Well, for the winter camps. And the girl she came in, she was started skiing, she read that, and then she was, I want to go out back skiing. So that was cool. She was like 3. And then she came in with her mom the other day, and she sees me, and she goes, "Hey, kitty." So I know kids love these, and it's great because I get to teach them reading through these books. And they're short. If they learn to memorize them, great. They're on their way to becoming a reader. They love these books, and that's what's going to make them a fun reader. Now, you don't have to struggle with your reading lesson because I get to read the kitty book, and the characters are just so lovable. And then what I did with this is when I got all the animals that are in a sequence, and then there's different ways to make stuff to go with this. I buy clip art, you can make color copies from the book, cut them out, laminate them, and now they can sequence them in the right order. So they're basically retelling the story. And then each animal says something, so I have them match what they say to the character. And so they're learning some good reading skills in there. And that brings in something hands-on. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that? What are some of the quality children's literature that you guys have used in the classroom that your kids love?
We have the entire Piggy and Gerald series.
25?
Mm-hmm.
Did you buy them separately? There's a book on it. I know they sell them.
We're the big Costco box set.
Okay, yeah.
This last Christmas, what they did before.
Yeah, because you can get them for the whole set for $100.
That's what we paid.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good.
Because my boys loved them, and then now they're Hannah's favorite books.
Yeah.
So we read them all the time.
And are they helping them with their reading skills?
No.
Uh-oh.
She's struggling in spite of
So
all of the things.
I know there's 25 of those, and then he writes 4 preschool. And he literally had the intention of making them easier.
And pigeon books.
Yeah, so you might wanna,
There's another set he did.
and this will help build their confidence because so that's one thing I use. The other thing is reading the part. Do you ever do that with them? Like,
She has them all memorized.
yeah.
She knows what to say, when to say it.
Okay.
She memorizes. She has no issue with
Mhm.
memory except for when it comes to actually identifying
Reading something new.
the letters
Mhm.
or the
Oh.
letter sounds, and she even struggles with rhyme.
Okay.
She can't. We've
Okay.
gone through nearly the entire all about reading, rereading thing.
Mhm.
I think we're on our third round for it.
Mhm.
And we've added Lexia Core 5, which is helping some with her letter recognition, but when I printed out the reports, it showed that her accuracy level was still incredibly low
With
And-
identifying letters.
with everything, with identifying the letters, with letter sounds, with blending, with whatever the core structures of Lexia Core are, her accuracy is very low. So I just keep reading.
How's her writing?
In mathematics, it's beautiful.
Oh, so she's got the good fine letter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she can do her name, but with the letters,
Letter identification.
with anything to do with language arts, she's just like, it's not my jam.
Wow.
So we're figuring that one out.
One of the things I do with letters, sorry, I have a few of these already cut out. It is kind of time consuming to make this stuff, but I, work with students again and again, so. So I took the letters and I have a thing where I just work on one shape, like a straight line, and I have my paper cutter here, but I didn't quite finish everything. So you take the letters and you say, let's look for all the ones with a circle in it. Does someone have scissors? Oh, I can use your markers too.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are your scissors right over here?
Okay, because I had one and okay, so I'll say, take all the ones with an O, and then sometimes I'll make a T chart. And then they find the cards, just like the ones you saw, and they say, oh, that has the O shape, that's the O shape, and they put the cards under here. So they're just moving the cards. And they're saying, yeah, that has, I shouldn't say O shape, circles. So they move the cards and it's a hands-on activity. Some cookie trays work great for this too. All you gotta do is draw a line down the middle. And so those are the shapes. And the other are diagonals. So what letters have a diagonal? And just like those shapes that I use. The X has a diagonal. The K has a diagonal. And but you get the idea, right? And that way they can start seeing the shapes that they didn't see before. And this I got out of one of my reading books. So I have 2 degrees in reading, one from UAS, and another, I have an ed specialist in literacy leadership through Michigan. So the other shapes are the tunnel shape, not the tunnel, or the valley shape. And they would put the, wait, that is not. So I made my vowels all orange on these cards because, and that way also you know that that's not the U. So we have the tunnel and they would put the N. These are magnetic. If you're making your own materials like this, I make mine, I either put a magnetic strip on the back or Velcro, depending on what I'm using. So the K would go here. Here's another diagonal. And then I make them color. Some kids are really attracted to color. That's a trick too that they use for math is writing numbers with colored pencils. And the color kind of relieves some of the stress or puts in on memory or whatever skills. So the W and the X go under this one. Then if you do straight line up and down. And there's only that book. It's the only one, maybe 1 or 2 things I've seen this in 2 things, one on the internet and one in one of my books for my course. But it really works. And it's hands-on. And these I consider kind of manipulatives. Is I do stuff with the cat books and things, and then they can move them and you can reuse them all the time. It's a little more interactive than just looking at all the print on the page. And there's the concept called scaffolding, and scaffolding is really important. And so how do we break it down to make it simpler from the book, but you also want it to tie into the book and the story. So I use the book kind of as the base and the jumping off point. This is something that can kind of be used standalone. It's got nice colors though, so it also keeps the kids engaged. And then moving the things with their hands. You're not just looking at a book or a test. You give the assessments. What?
Not for her.
You mentioned something about a letter.
We added Lexia Core 5, which is an electronic-based program.
I'm familiar with Lexia.
So I can print out reports based off of. So when I'm doing my quarterly progress reports and submitting those, I can add that to it. But all of her stuff is handy. We've got the letter tiles and the bean bags and the chalkboard and so
Did you do the sandpaper one?
We've rolled them out of clay. We have
Yeah.
the shaving cream. We have the tactile letters that she traces with sandpaper.
But it was interesting because didn't her math scores were
Off the charts,
right?
like in the over the 95th percentile. Like it showed she's got no issues.
And how old is she?
She's 5, so she's still. I mean, she's still very young. But if she can't, if you show her the capital letter alphabet and ask her to find, she's getting better. So this isn't totally like she's got none of them down. But it's taken us a very long time to get here. But if you show her the capital letter alphabet and ask her to find like the capital letter R, she will go. She's not just going to walk up to it and go, right there.
And some kids do that with math. And sometimes you can teach them over and over. I've done that with math where I've tried to teach them to count down and they'll go and count everything.
She's got it. She's skipped.
Yes, she's got the math.
2s and 10s and 5s and doing addition and no problem.
My brain is trouble with me. Anyway, so I'm a music teacher and I've taught little kids music. So some of what you're talking about makes me think of, because it's identifying a symbol associated with a sound, and it's making that connection. It's code breaking, and that's what music reading is. And so there are ways that we help young kids break the music code and teach them to read and teach them to identify a sound with what they see. And anyway, I'm just that's where my brain is going when you're talking about your daughter. And she's obviously finding patterns. And if she's looking at the alphabet and she's doing the whole list in her head, and she knows the numbers, and okay, she's finding patterns. And I wonder if a music type, connecting the symbol with the sound.
We tried that. Joan gave us the music CD that went along with the program, but we started top. She loves it. Oh, it just plays on repeat. She loves it, but there's not much that teaches that connects. Other than every letter makes a sound. A says,
Yeah, right.
but it doesn't. Outside of the
It's just interesting because numbers are symbols,
Mm-hmm.
and she knows the name of a number and can
She
recognize
knows the
that
name. She
symbol.
understands the value. She's solid on how they work. Yeah.
So she can memorize the words.
Mhm.
And now I'll kind of address it back to the whole group. So in these stages of reading, beyond just the words in the book, you can teach all the comprehension strategies. And because she can, this is building on her strength, she can memorize. We know she can memorize the stories she thinks are funny. She's using the pictures to make the story. So you can focus on that, and developmentally, some of the letters eventually will come. She's got some letters and she'll get some more. And at 5, not too much to worry about. So developmentally, she's still got time. So here's some, you can take all those concepts from teaching comprehension and build on those strengths that she already has. You can tell, I've done these comprehension lessons with characters and prior knowledge, even off the Gerald and Piggy books. So we can connect with our prior knowledge, and she can probably understand that. You can explain what it is. So she sounds very smart. Yeah. So you've got that as a strength. This kind of stuff you can write on a whiteboard or something. We're going to connect our prior knowledge with understanding the story. So, for example, Gerald and Piggy, we have prior knowledge. We know they're best friends. We know they care about each other. And we know sometimes Gerald gets sad or he has a problem. And Piggy helps him out, So it's like, what do you think Piggy's going to do? We're using our prior knowledge. And what I'm thinking about is when the Piggy pretends it's a cowboy and a robot. It's like, so what do you think they're going to do? And then discuss that story. You're building her comprehension strategies. So you can keep going with comprehension strategies. Introduce a couple minutes a day on letter recognition and just keep her happy. So keep the flowing. And then as her comprehension grows, and her letter recognition may grow slowly, but eventually she'll develop skills in that way and not stressful. Okay, so any questions on that? I have another one I use. Oh, and that's where, and it's one of the points, reading and writing go together. A lot of times we separate them. And here's another one. I like a kid, their children are working and learning, and I was like, hand them a book. Oh, but I can't read. Yeah, you can read the pictures. So have them read the pictures of, let's say, a new book they haven't memorized yet, and tell you the story based on those pictures. That, again, is building their comprehension, building their sense of a story. That's definitely going to help in building on the strengths. Another one, notice and wonder. I just keep these things handy, print them up and put them in these document savers thingies. You can get it. Also Dingo maybe. Or notice and wonder. You could have this for any story. You're reading them a story. What do you notice? And then what do you wonder? So notice is what's in the picture, and wonder is what's in their head, their questions. And then again, questioning is one of the most important comprehension strategies. Another comprehension strategy is questioning. Somehow I just wrote what I was going to say. So, yeah, work on those comprehension strategies. A lot of programs for early readers focus on phonics. One of the experts that I was trained with said no more than 5 minutes of phonics at a time. It's good, but comprehension is often neglected. One of the universities had this big thing on the 5 components of reading, and there was nothing on comprehension. I called them up or emailed. Why isn't there anything on comprehension? It's too hard to measure. It's a university. So remember, 5 components. Each one has their place. And this researcher who worked at the University of San Francisco, he came up to Juneau. I was trained by him. And I wrote a grant to help with 5 literacy. And he was one of the people I called up, gave me a lot of information, reviewed parts of it. He was supposed to come up and speak again. And the grant was awarded funds. And it was awarded an International Literacy Award. And these books here, Baby Raven reads. So I wrote the grant for them for literacy, based on some of Lance Gentile's work. So, and she was illustrating several of the Baby Raven Reads books, and she had never illustrated children's books before. So I'm especially proud of this book in Comic-Con because the funding we got for the grant helped her get her start as children's illustrator. So that's my background in children's literacy, birth to 5, and the oral and what Lance so Lance Gentile worked for University of San Francisco, and one of the #1 reading programs around the world, it's called, I'm gonna draw a blank, there's so much, I was gonna say Read Naturally, it's not, Reading Recovery. And he worked with the kids who didn't pass through Reading Recovery, and he found out, he's the one who said like no more than 5 minutes of phonics instruction a day for little kids. And systematic phonics instruction can be good, but it just has to be balanced.
This is birth to 5.
Or emergent literacy. He works in reading recovery works up to 2nd and 3rd grade. So it scans that field that we call emergent literacy.
Okay.
The very first. And emergent literacy, starts with any communication, which is what age? What?
Little to 0.
In the womb. Because kids can hear.
Yeah.
You can read books to them when they're developing the womb. And they recognize the voices when they're born. And reading has a different pattern. So reading books is very important. Even if you think they're not, they pick up the patterns, like whether it's poetry or a narrative or whatever. So, so there's, these are really tough topics, And some people say, just tell me like the main strategies. It's like, grad school, how do I boil it all down? And they're big issues. So. Okay, so we got one to read aloud for children of all ages. Most of you guys are working with little kids, but keep reading to them. After they evolve from picture books, poetry. Have them love poetry. And then one of my favorite, which I thought I had, it's called When the Moon is Full, and it's a poem for every season about the moon. And jumping down to number 5, you could, what I do is I read, that repeated reading part is really important. She got those down with the Elephant books. But you read it to them one day, the second day you read a line and they repeat it, and after a while maybe they can read it on their own, like even memorizing it. So, and then what else I do as a way to do repeated readings, with very short books or pages, they get to choose to read it funny or angry, silly. And so we do a silly voice and then read it together. And all of a sudden they're doing repeated readings and they're having a chance to express emotions. I was kind of surprised. One of the voices I always wanted to do was angry. For like one reading group. And I was like, they need a chance to pretend to be angry sometimes, So, did you have any questions? Okay. So what I found is sometimes when kids get to that part where they don't want to read because they don't know there's emotions in the reading. And some of the places, let's say a parent really never learned to read, which does happen sometimes. And if you're reading to them, the books are high quality and will help children develop into lifelong readers. And then I teach them that when you're reading aloud, always use emotion. And sometimes I'll go, I had my favorite book I want to share with you. It might be my 10th favorite, but that night it's my favorite. And always say, hey, this is how I'm coming to the good part. When I did read aloud with older kids, we had silent reading time. Some kid would come up to me. They were trying to find ways to get out of reading. I'm like, no, don't bother me. I'm reading now. And I'm reading my own paperback. I let them know in many ways that reading is important. And you can't interrupt me when I'm reading. And what's that going to teach a kid, right? It's really important, sacred. So make that reading time, show it. And sometimes you have to exaggerate a little bit. Oh no, I can't do this because I haven't finished this book yet, And also, remember, don't say, well, you have to do your reading first and then you can do something fun. Because reading is fun. So keep that in mind when everything you do about reading is fun. If there was one thing on my list, that's what it would be. Keep it fun and show how much you value, because that's what kids. I noticed that with skiing. Yesterday, there was a little girl. It's like, she wanted to go up the chairlift. I was like, do your mom and dad go up the chairlift? Yeah, and my grandma. And so she knows, and these kids, like, they're bragging about these different places that they've never been at Eagle Crest. And it's like they hear it around the dinner table, and they want to do it. They want to be like everybody else who's having fun. So think about that with reading, make it your favorite family sport. And that's why kids develop their own desires. And they're going to pick their favorites. They're going to develop into their own. So 3, all of you guys are English home language. Okay, so I encourage learning of other languages, because kids that have 2 languages, they do better on even math. There's different ways you can, bring in other languages. You were talking about singing. I had my songbook. Oh, it's right here. Oh, this was one of the other baby reading books. And this is one that, okay, I'll go straight for that. See Alaska.
Hey mom, I feel from last Christmas like so many little and I can watch the seasons well. Really. I have also got my Bible and yes, says it's version of
So in this I use for teaching reading. You can follow, when you read the songs, you follow your finger under the word left to right. So even if you're singing, you're teaching reading. Finger plays and all the motion things are very important because kids are learning everything. 5 Little Speckled Frogs. All the songs are written out. Even if they can't read them, like they can follow left to right. And then just do letter identification. What letter does Twinkle start with? And focus just on the T. And that's a way to scaffold up too. And again, just maybe work 1 letter at a time. And again, the finger plays. With this, maybe they're past this stage, but then you can also be teaching. Where's Thumpkin? Where's Thumpkin? Here I am, here I am. And then you can put out capital letter, question mark. So I have in here, that's the alphabet in Spanish. You can find all these on YouTube, like alphabet in Spanish or alfabeto. This one's on YouTube. Ways to introduce. I'm going to just sing that my singing's horrible. You can join in.
I don't love that.
Oh, I don't think I won't sing this. This one's actually a little tricky. Cuanto más juntos estemos. You can find it on internet with a woman doing sign language. So cuanto más juntos estemos. Cuanto más juntos estemos, tanto más felices seremos. And so she sings and does the sign language. So it's kind of an easy way to introduce Spanish.
She's saying ASL, American Sign Language?
American Sign Language, yeah, and singing in Spanish. And then, if your kid learns more and they know más, it's easy. Juntos, together. Feliz is happy. Any of you know sign language? Did you teach it when your kids were real little?
Yeah.
Our oldest, because he couldn't speak.
So we looked at Pulgarcito, and here it is in Spanish. So you could just have them do it in Spanish and look at children's books in Spanish. So that's kind of a way. And I know with homeschool, you guys get allotments to do different courses and stuff. So just a little reminder for increasing bilingual. If you have any relatives who speak another language, it's a way to connect with grandma and grandpa. Okay? And I don't know where this went, but vowel charts. A lot of kids have trouble with reading. They get too long and short vowels. So here I have pictures for all the long vowels and then the short vowels. So they can, if you come to a word that's difficult, you can say, "Can you change that long vowel to a short vowel?" And from grape, or you say, "Is that more like grape or is that more like?" And they can help you and identify that. And then, wow, the word makes sense now. When I say, let's say the word is train, and they read it tram. Was that a short one or long one? Is that like the A in grape? Or change it. You said it like the A in apple. Can you say it like grape? Okay. So we talked pretty much about everything. Prosody, anyone know what prosody means? It's reading with expression. So sometimes it's the pauses, the intonations, the question marks, and the emotions. So that I talked about. And you can, when you're modeling, you want to model that, and then you can teach kids to read. And the Piggy and Darling books are great for that because there's so much emotions in that, and you can tell the emotions from their faces. Like you can use 6 lines, and you know what emotion those characters are feeling. And that's why I say he's a genius at illustrating and writing books. So we talked about building on the children's strengths, and it sounds like you guys have do all of you have a lot of hands-on materials? Yeah. And then breaks. So when I do intensive reading instruction, after 10 minutes, it's a movement break of some kind. So anyone else have some issues like they're dealing with specifically that I can maybe toss up some ideas?
I have reluctant writers.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys, and the physical, they just don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah. I think I've noticed a bit more, well, a lot with just the writing skills and the, how old are the boys?
My oldest is 10,
Uh-huh.
10 and 7.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting, they'll sit and draw for
Yeah.
a long time.
Uh-huh.
And I've done a couple different things with my oldest. With my 7-year-old, I've basically just done copy work. I feel like I'm kind of cheating them out of giving them a good start to writing.
Yeah.
And like maybe I'm encouraging a hurdle in some way by not introducing it earlier. And because with my oldest, I knew it was going to be a fight, and I was like, I'm just not gonna fight. And he has beautiful handwriting. He, he's good at drawing and excellent reader. And when he sits down to write, he does a good job, but he just. So, I'm going to be moving to focusing more on IEW this
What
month.
is
IEW? It's Institute for Excellence in Writing.
What is it?
Institute for Excellence in Writing.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you have any comments about how to encourage writing in simple ways.
Yeah. Well, I use writing sentence frames a lot. So it's like the beginning of a sentence, and then they have to fill it in. And writing responses to literature, where reading and writing go hand in hand. And I have one example of that. Like graphic organizers are good. Do you have graphic organizers? Yeah.
I use those in my classroom.
Yeah.
For book reports a lot. We would use the graphic organizer to kind of
Mhm.
build our framework of what we're doing. with the
Right,
book
because you
reports.
can build almost every essay there is. There's a graphic organizer. I've had graphic organizers.
It can be fun too because they can write in bubbles and things.
Yeah. Like the Venn diagram is a
Bubbles.
compare and contrast essay.
Do they like
Um,
graphic novels?
Oh, yeah.
Because you could do something where they like write what they're saying in their little word bubbles and stuff like a graphic novel.
So a couple examples. This is examples of student work. I did have, I'm looking at some here. Yeah, I know I put it in here. Main idea and sporting detail. This will have these kind of, this is a graphic organizer. I have another one that's called 3-2-1. So whatever they write, it looks almost exactly like this. And so they write 3 things they learned, 2 things they have questions about, and 1 thing they want to learn more about, something like that. And it's basically, like a graphic organizer. This one is main idea and supporting details, which is really important for writing. Do you have stuff like this to scaffold their organization?
Similar, yes, things like that.
Yeah, I bet that excellence in writing.
It does. It's really good
Step by
breaking
step.
things down. Yeah.
My favorite is a story map, and this helps comprehend. The number 1 activity for, I think that's what I was going to say earlier, for comprehension is retelling. And you can do retelling with pictures. This might work good for your daughter. So there's 3 pictures from the story. and then they have to put them in order and tell the story based on the picture. And if you're strengthening their comprehension, like other things, other skills fall into place. So this is a story map. I call it the 4-square story map. You can take a piece of paper and fold it into 4, and they sequence out their story. I put the transition words up here for them, first, then, next, and last. I always put them in that order, then and next. First and last are pretty obvious. Or you can do, I do characters, problem, solution, and ending or transformation. How the characters changed or what they learned. So if you're really working on plot structures, you can change it up. But for little kids, I have another one that is just 3. So you just fold it in 3. I have it also drawn out as a graphic, but have them draw the picture this way or this way. They do it both ways. If you give them the paper and say draw, they draw their 3 pictures, and then tell me what the story was, and then they draw. And I have it so that they can write a couple lines at the bottom, and that will be their scaffolding for writing their stories. They can do it as a summary of a book they read, or make up their own stories. It works both ways. So if they draw 4 pictures and they have the lines for each picture, they've had to write a sentence. Can they write a sentence? Your sons?
Yes.
Yeah, based on the picture.
Yeah.
And then, okay, let's take that and write the story out with more detail. That's another scaffolding.
And would that be, so if I were to take something like that and break it up over a couple of days?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. This probably took 2 days at least. When I do a thing like this, it usually takes 2 days.
Okay.
So with little, and I did the tree one, and I've had kindergartners working on it too. Those pictures. And then they get the idea, like, they are writing the story in pictures. So, and then praise them so that you're building on their strengths. And, here's a Venn diagram, and it was just drawn totally freehand. So if you don't have the resources, but you got the idea, just go for it. And some of these I will write, I just have these. These are math ones I do, but to give you an idea, you can just print them and laminate them and have kids write with whiteboard markers. So everything you can make your own materials. I had the ones that I made for Cat and the Cat, but I didn't have them ready to grab, so I just kind of brought this as, like, I do matching, like I put the pictures right, the ones from the same as the book, because otherwise it's just kind of a meaningless activity. And then they draw lines like, oh, the bird matches the bird. So in this book it's, the characters are, it goes, hound the hound, what's your sound? And he says, woof. So sometimes I use hound. You gotta use hound because it rhymes with sound. Or I do dog. So there's a picture of a dog and the word dog, and they do the matching. And then you just focus on dog starts with D, or hound starts with H. So they're doing a matching, and at the same time you're inadvertently, what sound do you hear at the beginning of that? And research shows if you focus on sounds more than letters, it helps with going into reading. So chick, what sound do you hear at the beginning of chick? And then another, these are the blends blocks. So you take out the blend that says and focus on. So another way to make the blends hands-on. So chick. And these are the consonants and vowels. The vowels are red. So, and this one, if you were sequencing it, it'd be the dog, the chick, the cow. The cow says moo. The kids love this one. I was moo. And then, what sound is that? Yeah, that's what I am. And focus on the sound first. Then bunny. Have any of you read this book? What sound does a bunny make?
That's what I was just about to ask.
So he's like, he's not saying anything right there. Silent. He's still silent. And the cat's listening. See, that's why Mo Willems is like got it down. Like, and this is, you could mind this one, you know. Like you could ask 10 questions. Like, well, what's the cat doing? How does the bunny feel? Scared? Sad? Can't make a sound. And they're all waiting to listen to the bunny. And the cat says, sounds like someone needs a hug.
Aww.
So magical, right? I mean, like Mo Willems, he's just so great. And then he's accepted now. And he's smiling. You can ask, what are all their feelings now? So that's like so important. They're showing, you know, social emotional learning. These books have every emotion and help kids identify emotions. So
I heard Mo Willems say that another children's book author told him, I wish I could not draw like you don't draw. Like so simple and effective.
Yeah. So he did say he was writing Nuffle Bunny about his daughter's experience with her pet rabbit or stuffed rabbit. And so he's already writing for Sesame Street. And so he obviously rubbed shoulders with a lot of writers for children. And they go, the hardest thing to write are primers for children learning how to read, like first graders. So he wrote 25 of them. And it's the Gerald and Piggy books. And I was like, I never heard him. It said that he is writing to teach kids how to read and write. He wrote them as primers. School readers. So I've watched every YouTube video on him, and it's like really. And then he wrote these specifically for preschool. He started out with 2, and then he wrote 2 more. So the Nuffle Bunny books, there's like what 3 of them at least, and then pigeon books, so many, but 25.
We've got a bunch of them in our library too.
Yeah, and 25. Yeah. Oh, a bunch of the pigeon book or all of them?
A bunch of the pigeon ones. I'm not sure how many, but I know.
Oh, yeah, the pigeon ones are great. Yeah, they're hilarious. Yeah. And well, this is just a chick, but what is it? Duckling appears in the.
Yes.
And Duckling is a very lovable character.
I think you can go on his website and you can put your kids' names in there and print off a certificate that says so and so did not let the pigeon try.
Oh, right.
Nice.
Yeah. So another way to make it interactive is the characters from the book. Could have kids draw them. And on cardstock laminate, put them on craft sticks. In the medical profession, they call it something different. Craft stick, and then have them talk about their story. Retelling is going to be the most important.
For how to draw. And it's a separate book. Like, and he's like, this is how I draw.
Yeah.
And this is how you draw. Oh my gosh. Kids destroy that book.
The activity books?
I think Mo Willems did like a drawing instruction book, taught kids how to draw.
Was it like a step by step? That was
Well, it's also on YouTube.
Kids wrecked it.
Yeah.
They used it so much that it was just like, what's going on?
So the YouTube videos, I think during COVID, because he was like the artist in resident at Kennedy or and teaching drawing, and so they put all those on video during COVID. The kids, I was teaching some Guatemalan children how to read and write. And so they had big chalk drawings on the outside and figuring out so similar. And then we watched the videos with the kids, not too much. Any other questions?
Thank you for sharing.
Hope I didn't go on too long. So if anyone has any questions, you can email me. My email's on here. Did you want one? I forgot your name.
I'm down.
Okay.
Tracy.
Okay. You have one?
I've got your stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stick it in my collection.
Okay.
Sure. So I think, Maria, thank you very much. We also had Mary Carson who just printed up and I think Holly linked it to an email or something. She'll put it in the newsletter. A couple of you had this, but very similar to what Maria shared. She just kind of just outlined 5 top things to consider when you're teaching reading. Maria said this, model it. Super important. Just read yourself, read out loud. Never let reading be a drudgery. Read to squirming somersaulting kids as well as the silent sit still type. I loved that because they can be moving and running around, but they're still listening. I think that was great. Draw pictures similar to what Maria said. Make connections to life and nature and other people, history and other books. Utilize prior knowledge. Talk about it casually later. I thought that was a great one too because I'm sometimes process things slowly and I can read something and then 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour later I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So that's great. I love that. I touched on a little bit of that conversation piece as well. Praise every success. Maria touched on this too. Little bitty, I loved what you said about 5 minutes a day. I also read that in some other things I'll share with you here in a conference that I went to. They said that little bite-sized pieces of phonetic, however you decide to teach phonetics or awareness, little chunks at a time over the course of a day, over the course of a week, will amount to more time than frustration. 30-minute lesson. So very much agree with that. And she and praise every little step, even if they don't know exactly where they are. They internalize so much. We know that our kids do. They compare themselves to other people. To their siblings. They internalize so much. I think praise is huge. Talked about fluency. She said, teach that fluent means to flow like water from a spout, like milk from a carton, like the Minnehaha River. Fluency is a goal, but praise every trickle. So fluency is the goal and comprehension. And so many people, I really appreciate what Marie said too, is so many people look at the building model where it starts with oral language and it goes to phonemic awareness and phonics and then fluency and comprehension. Well, some people think that they're not going to get to that comprehension or the fluency until all this other stuff is mastered at the bottom level. And that's really not true. I mean, so many other students can be comprehending things, much like Hannah, so early on, but the phonics is still developing. So praise every little step with that. Vocabulary supports growth in reading. Teach elementary root words to build vocabulary. She recommended, that was good. 3, she said, pay attention. And then, of course, she said, paying costs you something, usually time. The word attention comes from a root word that means to stretch. Attention also has the same root as tender. So paying attention makes us more tender teachers as we stretch ourselves to the needs of our children. I thought that was really good, and then I loved this. Be the student of your teacher. Because sometimes when you're a student, obviously you're learning, and when it's your child, you're learning how to teach your child. Every child's different in a family, so be patient with yourself. Be patient with your child. And I know it's hard. Sometimes I just had a conversation with a mom today. It's so easy as a homeschool mom to try, and we want to try to find one curriculum that we can use for all of the kids because it does save time. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you're having to find one curriculum for each child, and it does stretch you as a parent and a mom. I've been there. I know. But hang in there because it does work. I promise it does work. My daughter could not have used the same curriculum my son used to read. She just couldn't. It didn't work for her, and we were hitting roadblock after roadblock. We had to find, I don't even know if they make it anymore, a sing, spell, read, and write. And it would have drove my older son bonkers to do every song with every letter. But for Hannah, she needed it, and it cemented it in her mind. So be patient with yourself, because it may take many different curriculums to try to find that one curriculum that will work. Pay attention to your child's ability to pair sounds to its symbols. When you pay attention to vowel confusion, etc., she touches on dyslexia as primarily an audio processing problem. So it is. It starts with all language and reading starts orally, auditory. So very important to pay attention to that. Screenings, hearing screenings, eye screenings, pay attention to those. Dyslexia is something that, and Beth will just touch on it just a little bit in the SPED arena. If you have concerns with that, Leah probably has some suggestions or some people to talk to, screenings. Talk early on. If you're nervous about it or if you see something that could be potentially an issue, let us know. Let Beth know, talk to Joan, talk to Holly. There are people in place that we can direct you to help you. There's screenings and just quick checks that we can give you to help you determine if that's an issue. She says, learn about dyslexia at the first sign of difficulty. Difficulties are often signaled by a child's anger, anxiety, or shame. She lists a couple things here. The Barton Reading and Spelling Program, fabulous website, numerous other resources available. She's shares a statistic with us. 15% of people are dyslexic. If you are overwhelmed, please get help. Smart families use resources. Find a curriculum, dyslexia curriculum, or a tutor. Seek out someone to help you if you feel like you are teaching dyslexia. And then lastly, she says, enjoy learning, which Maria shared a lot of tips on how to do that. Organize information into simple charts or diagrams. For older children, make a short list of what needs to be accomplished before they can be free. I thought that was kind of cute. This provides the enjoyment of achieved goals. Tell stories, go to the library, use graphic novels, listen to audiobooks. Celebrate your child's strengths and balance with supporting their weakness. Play hard and work well. Lighten their load if needed, get outside. And this is my favorite, believe in sunshine holidays. So important here. Anyway, Mary Carson, she has bookmark tutoring. She's also on here. Great resource if you have any questions about that. You want to touch on any of the things that she shared?
Well, building on kids' strengths, and as a teacher, you are also a student. I think the more time you invest in really getting to know your child's strengths, that's important. And I think that's if you guys all have, because you have time to do things.
Yeah,
Getting to know their strengths.
yeah. Any questions on that or comments? One last thing, and then I think we'll jump into Beth. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, this was just released by the Alaska Department of Ed. It's called the Alaska's Reading Playbook. I went to a conference in the spring as kind of a highlighter, kind of a jump start of this program. Alaska is starting an Alaska Reads Act, which some of you might have heard about, but they're really pushing and really recognizing that Alaska's literacy rate is very low across the nation compared to the other nations and countries. We're very low in our reading scores. So Alaska, the Department of Ed has taken it seriously, and they have looked into many other states that have also been in the low category. Mississippi is one of them. Mississippi was low in the, I think she said, I got to listen to this one lady who's actually the Mississippi, she was a superintendent for a district there, and she came and spoke. And they implemented strategies that were listed out in this reading playbook, and their literacy rates grew astronomically within 2 to 3 years. So this is backed by science, it's backed by research, it's a systematic approach to reading. So it's going to hit on the stages of reading where we talk about oral language, we talk about phonemic awareness, we talk about learning phonics, we talk about fluency, we talk about comprehension. It touches on all of those. And so the main thing I just want to is so much. I can't even begin to explain all of it right now in such a short amount of time. Holly has a link to this. We could print this here at the office for you if you want. There's also a digital link that you can go on. They have in here every strategy, or not every strategy, I'm sorry. They highlight every kind of building block. There you go. Thank you, Holly. Building block that is in the stages of reading. And then within those building blocks, they give you tips on how to do it. How do I actually teach phonological awareness? What is it? You know, how do I teach it? And so they give you little videos or links on how to do that. How do I unpack, phonics? How do I really get my kiddo to understand it? It's not a save all thing. It's going to teach your child to read. It's just a really handy resource for you as a parent, us as teachers, to be able to fall back on and to use. The seminar we went to, they're working on creating curriculum that supports all of this. They don't have anything that they can say, okay, Alaska Reading Playbook would actually go right with this curriculum. But what they did do is they went through on a website, and they have a team that is developing this currently, really evaluating all curriculums that have been around for years, and they're plugging them into this spreadsheet, into this some technical issue. I don't know. It was really interesting to listen to, but way above my head. And if how it identifies in the program to the components and compares to the components that they are encouraging you to use, or the steps to reading. It's new. That this was, I think this was 2000 last spring is when this came out. Very helpful. It's a little notebook. You could read through it quickly. Gives you some tips. Don't get overwhelmed by it. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I just want it to be a resource that you could possibly use and springboard into what you're doing. So with this systematic approach that they talk about in here, 3 curriculums came up when I typed in just some top 21 systematic approaches to reading for homeschooling curriculum. All About Reading was one of them. I know some of you have used them, some of you have not. Some like it, some don't. Basically, what it said is that they use a systematic approach to reading. You're going to start with the sounds of letters. You're going to start with writing the letter, tracing it, and all kinds of hands-on tools that you can use this with. And then you're going to move on to the actual phonics. And then you're going to move on to blending CVC words, that, hat, set. And you're going to move into adding maybe the silent E at the end of words. So it's sequential, it's systematic, it's proven. So I'm not saying to use it, I'm just giving you an example of something that they recommended. And then the logic of English right here, testing foundations. This is a level A, I think it goes B, C, and I think it goes D too. Also a systematic approach to reading. It's going to start out, it's going to kind of build on what you know. And so, are you familiar with this one?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Okay.
Oh,
Foundations. Yeah, so logic English.
The logic of English. So is that the title, Foundations?
Foundations A, yeah. And so the actual company is Logic English.
Okay.
Systematic approach to reading. So those are the 2. They also listed Pride, which I'm unfamiliar with. It uses the Orton-Gillingham method. I believe Mary Carson uses some of that, and it's very similar to some of the Barton curriculum. Maria, do you know much about that?
Orton-Gillingham?
Yeah.
Multisensory.
Multisensory approach. Do you use that?
It's integrated in my work.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I know we are
I'm sorry if I went over.
No. We appreciate that, and I want to make sure they have enough time to ask you more questions if they have. I think Holly also is going to share some links, some things that I found. Phonemic awareness, what it means, how to practice it. And then Teresa and Joan did a reading workshop several years ago, and then had built a really nice slideshow. And on the slideshow, they had a couple slides that I made some copies of for you that Holly will send in. But one of them is just breaking down, again, the top 5 big ideas or the building blocks to reading and what they actually mean. Like what is phonemic awareness? What is phonics? What is fluency, vocabulary, comprehension? So it's concise, it's short, it just kind of helps you have those. Okay, I'm going to stop talking so Beth can start and share a little bit.
Well, I was going to share a little bit from the special education side of it, because often we start reading instruction and you're trying everything and it's not working. And so people start throwing around dyslexia. Well, dyslexia is actually, it's a medical diagnosis, but it manifests itself in ways that you can see. Some people start getting concerned when their student might be reversing letters. But that's also developmental. So, maybe up through, towards the end of first grade, probably, sometimes the beginning, depending on where they are developmentally, it's a pretty common thing. But it's something to be aware of and to watch and to address. And there's different things that you can do if your student is doing letter reversals or, especially when you get into reading, the sound substitutions and things like that. But there's different things that you can do to work with. Maybe it's just like a fine motor skill that needs addressed. So with dyslexia, really, I think the beginning of, well, let's see, on the special education side, we don't test for dyslexia because, like I said, it's like a medical diagnosis. But we can do screenings for like a learning disability, and that's what the special education teacher would do. It's like, okay, you're having difficulty with this, let's address it. I have a couple of these, the Jordan Dyslexia Assessment, and there are some assessments in this book, and there are lessons that are associated with them too. But again, it's for students that probably about the age of 7 that you would screen.
But one face was the king and the world.
Yeah. So, I guess my part, because I mean everybody's heard dyslexia and have their concerns. So that's something that if you do have concerns, to either ask me or Joan, as our other special education teacher. And then the process would be to do like an intervention, to try a couple different things for a couple months to see if there's a response to that intervention. And then from there, we would go to doing assessments. But even before doing that, Tracy mentioned screenings. That's, with your well baby checks as your children are growing, always vision and hearing, because my daughter, it was a vision, and it wasn't just being able to see, but it was like a muscle issue with not being able to focus. And so that impeded her ability to learn how to read. So those are really important screenings.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Beth. I think it's helpful to know from that side, the special ed side, where to go if you think the steps that it takes to actually make you sort of got something. That there's an intervention, and there's assessment, and there's a diagnosis.
One of the things I've done as a reading specialist, because dyslexia is, as a medical diagnosis, I just make my print really big and simple, and I make sure I use a font that doesn't have the funny A or G.
Yes.
I always type up everything just a little bit bigger. And that's where this comes in handy.
Yeah.
So even if I'm teaching the lesson, even the objective is right there. Easy to read. Make it as easy as possible for them, because we never know really what's going on between the brain and eye connection. Very complex.
One thing that I remember, a big takeaway that when I went to that conference, was the importance of and the connection of the brain with writing when you're learning to read. So that is a very important piece to when you are learning to read, is actually writing or moving, the actual act of moving your hands. So even tracing an oatmeal or tracing a sandpaper letter as you're learning the sound of a letter is super important. I thought that was really interesting. They actually showed 2 brains the color coding of the synapses and how when you're actually writing the difference in the synapses that are firing when you're actually writing, when you're reading versus just reading still. That was actually
With the multisensory approach to the air writing and the connection between stretching your arm out to what's going on in the brain. Seeing letters on the wall and drawing.
And really important is print approximations. So start with anything. So if they're writing they draw a picture and they have 3 print approximations. That's a story. And then later they're going to be, identifiable letters. And you're always like, what sound do you hear when a boy was writing a story about an eagle. What sound do you hear when you hear eagle? And then they got 1 letter down. That's great. Or 3 letters in a row that approximate the sound of the word.
Yeah.
So that's, praising those steps of approximations, print approximations.
And even like Jane, you'd mentioned about writing, of course your boys are older and are writing sentences, but with the little ones, you used to do journaling too. And I know like in preschool and kindergarten, we always had the kids do a journal and the little ones, it would be a picture and if they could just get, this is an eagle. And if they just got that E on the page, it's like, yeah, we're starting.
journal is huge.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. I think some of you know that already, but you can start at any level and you can start with a picture just like you can label as they get older before they're writing sentences, start labeling and then
Dictation or language experience.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole paper on language experience, which is basically dictation and having, if the kid dictates, if the child dictates the sentence that goes along with their picture, their stories, and then you read it back to them, and then eventually they'll read it back.
Yeah.
The whole reading, writing cycle. That's why I put on my points, reading and writing go together. That's a whole book in itself right there.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for your time. Lots of ideas.
Just finding out what works.
Yeah.
Over the years with every
That's
child.
so true. Yeah.
And I like, everything I've learned along the years of helping kids. They're
Their favorite
work. With others.